We'll first then hear from Dr. Karin Nienstedt. She's Policy Officer at DG Sante at the European Commission, and she'll be giving us an overview of, the regulation around biopesticides, but then also with regard to Xylella fastidiosa. So please give a warm hand to Dr. Karin Nienstedt.
So can you hear me now? Okay. Buongiorno signore, buongiorno signori. I will continue in English. I think that's better. Thank you very much for the invitation and also for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here in Locorotondo for the final conference on BIOVEXO. I am Karin Nienstedt. I work for the European Commission in the unit of plant health. That's in the Directorate General of Health and Food Safety. I joined recently the unit. It's not working. I can move it. So you hear me better now? This way? It's okay? So I joined recently the unit, so Xylella was of course not completely new for me. I worked in other areas of crop protection before, so it's a particular pleasure to be here on BIOVEXO to learn also more about your results. I will give you a regulatory update, so probably there's not a lot of new things for you. On plant health and what concerns Xylella, and also as regards regulation of pesticides or biopesticides. What are the steps to be done? So next slide, please. Oh, it's me moving it? Okay. So as regards the legislation on plant health, the legislation currently in place, it's, let's say, the big regulation on the plant health law, on protective measures against pests of plants. It's a relatively new regulation. It's from 2016, so after Xylella had the first outbreaks. And then as regards Xylella fastidiosa, is this working? Can you click maybe? There are a series of, let's say, daughter legislations. Can you click again? It's not working. It's not working. No. So there are a series of daughter legislations, implementing regulations, delegated regulations. One which is implementing regulation 2019-2072, which is the big implementing act to implement the plant health law, which has the list of quarantine pests. Of course, Xylella fastidiosa is listed as quarantine pest. Then you have a delegated regulation listing priority pests, which also lists Xylella fastidiosa. And then there is an implementing regulation from 2020, number 1201, which specifies the measures which have to be taken to prevent the introduction and spread of Xylella fastidiosa in the EU. I think that's not new for you. As regards where we have Xylella at the moment, this map is really new. It will be published in a few days on the Sante website, and it has been updated recently to show this little outbreak in Gargano in Italy, and also this big area in France, which was changed very recently from eradication to containment. So you see Xylella is, I mean, if you compare it with a map of 4 years ago, it's moving and it's advancing. So as regards the history on Xylella, I mean, this is a bit of a timeline. So as you know it better than me, there was a first outbreak or detection in 2013. And then there was a series of, let's say, EU legislations to try to control the situation in 2014, in 2015, based on information prepared by EFSA here. And then so you see EFSA has been working continuously since 2013 on the topic with several updates on the scientific information. And then in 2020, there was the implementing regulation. This was, I mean, all the decisions were superseded by the implementing regulation 2020-1201 because of the change of plant health law, which was here in 2016. So this implementing regulation was then amended a few times as regards the host plant species and as regards the containment zones. The last amendment was just voted in September few weeks ago, and it was published few days ago, actually last week, I think. So what is important to know is that last year we have asked EFSA to update the scientific risk assessment, and once we have a new compilation, let's say, of the last state of the art, then we will see what needs to be done and how we can update the, let's say, regulatory situation at the moment. But at the moment, we are waiting to EFSA to see what is the update of the scientific information. And I think Giuseppe will probably give us more information on this. So just in a nutshell, the last changes in the implementing regulation are the definition of the vector of Xylella, that it clarifies that when a pest is found in the vector, when Xylella is found in a vector, the surface needs to be identified in the infected plants to establish the demarcated areas. It updated the list of high-risk plants, and since 2024, it made a little change for the containment zones in a way that it changed the zone between the buffer zone and the infected zone where the surveys have to be identified. So this was reduced from 5 kilometers to 2 kilometers. So that's on Xylella. I would like now to move to the regulation of biopesticides and what are the steps to bring them to the market. I understood, as it was said, that BIOVEXO is about finding solutions. That's fantastic. I am looking forward to the day to see what are the solutions. But to be able to use these in the farm, they need to be, let's say, put on the market. There are a series of regulatory steps which have to be done. And this falls under the regulation of placing on the market of plant protection products, which works in a nutshell like a pharmacy. It's putting solutions to the farmers on a shelf. It's not regulating the use. It's making solutions available. So you could compare it like a pharmacy where you go to buy medicines, or to a farmer's toolbox, so that the farmer can choose the tool which they need for solving the problem. So what is a plant protection product? As a reminder, it's a product, usually liquid. It could be also have other formulations, which contains an active substance. The active substance can be a chemical or a microorganism under the legislation. And it may contain other ingredients like coformulants, safeners, or synergists. That depends on the product. It's working as a two-step authorization system. That's important because there is an approval of active substances at EU level, and there is an authorization of the plant protection product uses at member state level. So there are two steps to be done. As regards the active substance, it works like a positive list of active substances. Same applies to safeners and synergists. So the substances need to be approved and put on a list, and only then they can be used in plant protection products. This means that the burden of proof is for the applicants. No data, no market. That's the principle. So the applicants need to prepare a dossier which contains studies, or let's say data requirements, which are defined by law, which have to be done via GLP, good laboratory practice, and the dossier also needs to include peer review literature. Depending on the substance, they may be categorized or regulated as different kinds of substances, low-risk candidates for substitution, basic substance, or let's say the normal or regular ones. And there is a periodic reassessment. So it's not an approval forever, it's an approval for a definitive time. Then as regards coformulants, that's important, it's a negative list. So coformulants are also regulated, but there is a list of unacceptable coformulants, and there is a process to add, let's say, substances to this list of unacceptable coformulants, but there is not a positive list like for the active substances. So the first step of approval means that an applicant needs to prepare a dossier. Then this dossier contains the data requirements under first risk assessment. Then this goes to member states, to a rapporteur member states who makes an assessment. Then there is a peer review by member states and EFSA, which ends with an EFSA conclusion. And based on this EFSA conclusion, then the Commission and the member state decide if the substance can be approved and put on the positive list or not. It's a clear separation of risk assessment and risk management. There are a lot of scientific experts involved. It's a process which takes 2.5 to 3 years, and often longer because of several reasons. And the approval is for a maximum of 15 years. Then it would need to be renewed. Then, if the substance is on this positive list, then the second step kicks in for the authorization of plant protection product. And this means that each member state could authorize a plant protection product. However, in order to make it easier, Europe is divided in zones, and then let's say there is a common assessment done in each zone where there is an interest to authorize the products, and member states cooperate. And then once there is an authorization of our plant protection products, other member states could mutually recognize. There are other provisions. Member states could authorize minor use extensions. These are cases where industries may not be interested to submit a dossier for an authorization, but there is already a product on the market which could be used, and then member states could extend to minor uses. And member states can grant emergency authorizations. These are they are fast, they are quicker. They can be granted by member states for problems where there are no solutions available. So the good thing of emergency authorizations is that they are fast and pragmatic, but they are only for 120 days. Of course, if there is a need, they could be repeated, but they are limited in time. So for a normal authorization, it's 16 to 22 months. Also here, there are many delays. And the duration of the authorization is the approval of the active substance plus 1 year. So for an applicant who wants to get a new active substance or a new plant protection to the market, what should they do? So they would need to prepare to make an application for approval of an active substance. That means they need to prepare a good dossier and get ready early in time. They need to think what are the representative plant protection product uses they will put in the dossier. If it's one use, if there are more uses, I mean, these may be strategic decisions to be taken. They need to think which data are needed and how to organize the submission via Euclid. Euclid is an IT system, it's quite big. So there may, some advice may be needed there. So it may be a possibility to get advice from a consultancy or to talk, let's say, to people. Then for new active substance, you can select the rapporteur member state. But it's important to get early in contact with rapporteur member states because sometimes there are waiting times for the different member states. So it's not that an applicant comes and say, I have a dossier and here I submit it and it's done. Sometimes they say, okay, but I can only look at it in 2 years' time. So you need to get early in contact with rapporteur member states. And then there is the possibility to ask for pre-submission advice in member states and in EFSA. So that's to clarify the scope of the dossier maybe, or what is needed, and that's also a possibility which is good and which could be planned early. Then once the dossier for the approval of the active substance is submitted, it's good to follow it up in order to get ready in time for the applications for the plant protection product in member states. So there are quite a number of implementing regulations which are relevant. The list of active substances, which is this one. Data requirements, we have 2 implementing regulations, one for active substances and one for chemicals. One for active substance, one for plant protection products, and we have uniform principles of evaluation. They are relevant. For each of these, there are always a part for chemicals and a part for microorganisms. Important for the microorganisms, there were quite recent updates to make it easier for microorganisms to access the market. Then for coformulants, the list of unacceptable coformulants and the labeling requirements, which may be also important for the dossier compilation. For biopesticides, in particular important, the need-to-know approach, which is it's implicit in the legislation. For microorganisms, I mentioned the recent update. With this update, the biological properties were put at the center, and this means that some data requirements are conditional, depending on the particularities of the biology of the active substance. So that means it's really need to know and not nice to know, and there is a scope of conditionality in the data requirements. For the part A on chemicals, this also applies to some chemicals which would be regarded as biopesticides, like pheromones, botanicals, peptides, antibodies. So this falls under the chemical part. However, also here there is a need to know implicit, which if I put this on the screen because I think it's important. The data requirements for chemicals are quite extensive, but there is this general point in the introduction of the data requirements which says that some data may not be needed under certain conditions, which are basically scientific justifications that it's not needed because of the nature of the product or the uses. So there's always the possibility to waive data based on these provision. So need to know approach, and there is a problem formulation guidance document which could help to find these justifications. Guidance documents are in a database which you could find on Santé, including this problem formulation document. And that's the situation today. We are working to make it easier for biocontrol plant protection products to access the market. And there are 2 things I would like to announce. This is not yet available, but it's in the making, so keep an eye on it. So one is that there is an amendment for the data requirements ongoing, where the public consultation closed in October. Possibly it will be voted at a standing committee in December, and then there are 3-month scrutiny of the Parliament and the Council. If these don't object, then the act could be adopted more or less in the 2nd quarter of next year. And what is important in the context of biocontrol is that this part 1.5, which I mentioned in the previous slide, we have made it more explicit, mentioning microorganisms, semiochemicals, or other substances originated from or secreted by living organisms, that they would be applicable to get, let's say, this derogation. And we hope that these would facilitate the justification process. And then another thing which is in the making is, and that you may also have heard about, is that we are preparing a food and feed simplification package, which will contain some targeted amendments to the plant protection product regulation, which includes a definition of biocontrol active substances, the possibility of member states to grant provisional authorizations for plant protection products containing such new active substances before the approval process is finished. So while the evaluation is ongoing, these provisional authorizations could be granted. Then there would be a fast-track procedure for the approval and authorization, and additional resources to EFSA to speed up the risk assessments. So there was a call of evidence on these, which closed in October, where member states and stakeholders could provide comments which were considered in the draft. So the draft is, of course, not yet public because we are working on it. Once the proposal is adopted by the Commission, then there will be a negotiation with Parliament and Council. So this could take some time. So on this, let's say, process, I cannot give you more indications as regards the timing. So that's it from my side. I put a slide with, let's say, important links, which may be useful. And that's it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Karin. Maybe a couple of questions, if you'll allow, and also feel free to raise your hand. I have a couple, but okay, we have one here. I'll start with you then.
Pasquale Saldarelli from the CNR. Several questions. I learned in BIOVEXO the biostimulants and plant protection products. So this distinction I need to know. Another question is, you say that if a product is present on the market, even an NGO, farmer organization, can promote, can ask for its use as a plant protection. Is that correct?
Okay, thank you for the questions. Indeed, the issue with biostimulants, that's something which still is a little bit under discussion, because in the fertilizer legislation they put biostimulants, and there are some products which are a little bit like, it has to be clarified if they fall on one side or another. There is an ongoing discussion on these, also with member states, to clarify these. If you have a particular question, I would advise you to go in contact with your competent authority, your national competent authority, to clarify these, or to come back to us with a particular question, so that we can look at it. As regards the issue of authorization of plant protection products by other, let's say, parties which are not the applicant, what I meant is that under the minor uses and the mutual recognition processes, if the industry is not submitting, let's say, an application for an authorization of a plant protection product, there is a provision in the legislation that third parties, academia or national institutes, could do so under certain conditions. The thing is that it has not been used very widely so far by member states, because there are also fees associated with these dossiers and the applications, but there is a possibility to do that. So I can only advise also here to get in contact, if you have such a case and you have an interest, to get in contact with the local authorities to see what can be done. And this applies for mutual recognition. It's not for new authorizations. It's for authorizations which are already, which exist, and which then would need to be, let's say, for mutual recognitions, if it exists in another member state and you would like to get it authorized in your member state. So that's the mutual recognition. And for minor users, there is an authorization in your member state for a particular crop, and you want to expand it to other uses. So there needs to be an authorization in place. But then there is the process that these third parties could ask for either mutual recognition or minor use extension, indeed, yes.
And on the authorization, so you mentioned, up to 2 years, potentially with delays, or it's a long process. Out of curiosity, if there's a product emanating from a European-funded project, could it arguably benefit from some kind of fast-track process because it was, emanating from, let's say, taxpayers' money and an investment from the public authority, or would it be treated completely equally as any other applicant?
I think that depends on the member state. That's why I said it's important to get in contact very early with the rapporteur member state you are thinking of. I know informally that some member states, they are very pragmatic. They say first comes, first serve. So then there is a new application and it goes at the end. So, but there may be other rapporteur member states who have a particular interest who would be maybe ready to give priority to that. So it depends really member state by member state. And that's why it's important to get in contact early to clarify this. Also, if it's a new active substance, there may be, there is the free choice of the rapporteur member state. There may be rapporteur member states who are more interested than others to assess a certain dossier. But also that needs to be, I mean, there is a need to get to the competent authority and to say, I am preparing these, would you be interested to be a rapporteur member state? And let's say to see what is the situation. So early contact is important.
Okay, and maybe last one on, so you talked about the regulatory framework around plant protection products. Has there been any assessment done on the interaction between the spread of Xylella fastidiosa and the European regulatory framework on plant protection products, i.e. has the regulatory framework had an effect on the spread of the disease because maybe, I don't know, it prevented a certain substance of being used or something like that? Has that kind of assessment been made? Or would you argue that the spread of Xylella fastidiosa has nothing to do, let's say, with the regulatory framework in the European Union?
Well, to my knowledge, I am not aware of such a study, and probably this would be then also an issue to be studied in the member states concerned, because as Commission, we don't have the overview of which are the plant protection products authorized in each member state. So that's a national issue. So that's more for each of the member states to look at. Well, what I know is that Xylella is biologically a very complex and difficult disease to tackle because there is a vector involved, so it's not such a straightforward thing. And it's something new, and so science needs to develop solution, and then this needs to come to the market. That is not happening in 1 year, in 1 day, unfortunately, also not in 1 year. Maybe just back to your previous question on the delays. Very often the delays are also caused because the dossiers may not be complete, because maybe the applicant thought this is not needed, and then the member state says, yes, but I need this. So, and that's again, back to my plea, get in contact with the rapporteur member state and EFSA with the pre-submission advice early so that you can really prepare a good dossier, because if the dossier is good, the process runs. If there are follow-up questions, then the delays occur because there are months between the authority coming back to the applicant coming back with the answer, maybe generating new data, etc. That takes a long time.
Okay, thank you so much, Karin, for your time, and you'll be with us all day, so if you have any questions for Karin, I'm sure she'll be able to take them throughout the day. Please give a warm hand then to Karin. Thank you. So Karin also mentioned the importance of the scientific opinions provided by EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, and that then informs policy, but it also is a very important organization in terms of authorization. So now we'll be hearing from Giuseppe Stancanelli, who's in charge of plant health risk assessment at EFSA. Please welcome Giuseppe.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well? Yes. So thanks a lot to BIOVEXO for inviting me to this conference, and I'm very, very keen and looking at the results of this European funded project for the control of Xylella and for biopesticides. So my presentation is a follow-up of one of the two topics were presented before by Karin Nienstedt. Is about risk assessment, plant health risk assessment supporting the control of Xylella fastidiosa and the link to research. And I will not talk about pesticide authorization, which is also done by EFSA, but not by my team today. So these are the 4 topics I would like to briefly present you. So what are we doing to update the risk assessment of Xylella in these years? So we intend to finish by end of next year. Something about the EFSA-funded targeted focus research on knowledge gaps on Xylella, which is different from the European project, it's much smaller. The European Conference on Xylella and the communication campaign Plant Health for Life, very briefly. So we received from DG Santé a mandate. DG Santé tasked us in 2024 to update the 2019 risk assessment on Xylella, which was quite recent, was 5 years before concluded. The reason for this new mandate is to look at the specificity of the European outbreaks and the different subspecies present in Europe. So, situation in Europe has evolved. We have new outbreaks, different subspecies present. So, we will look at what we've done in 2029 for Xylella in general, Xylella fastidiosa in general, and focus on the data we have from the European outbreaks and on the different subspecies. So we look at spread impact, scenario for eradication or containment, risk reduction option. At the end of this process, in the course of 2026, we will open our risk assessment to a public consultation where we ask the public, the citizen, the scientists to contribute by commenting and sharing evidence. So we're not asking to say we like or we don't like what you are saying, because that's not very useful for us. We will ask, look at what we have done. You think we've done right or wrong? Do you have other evidence that we didn't consider? So that's the purpose of a public consultation. After that, we revise the risk assessment and finish by end 2026. A lot of people involved in this, so we have a working group of experts, panel members, scientific experts, more than 10, from microbiologists, plant pathologists, modelers, entomologists, etc. We have my unit, EFSA Plants unit, with many colleagues, methodological unit in EFSA, but we also have collaboration with research institutions through grants. We work with the CREA in Bologna, with the CNR in Bari, with University of Bari. We have external consultant, and then we also consult with specific scientist expert or national expert from phytosanitary authority for particular information, data, evidence. They are called hearing expert. That's a small photo of only the people that were there when we took the photo in that meeting, but the group is much bigger. As you see from this plan, you can read it, probably very small, but the plan is to conclude most of the activity in Q1 and Q2 2026. So let's say before the summer to conclude most activity and to launch the public consultation. We would like to launch consultation on more technical annexes between Q1 and Q2 2026. And the consultation of the full assessment will be launched in the summer 2026. And here I present you briefly different activity we are conducting. I cannot show you the final results because the work is still ongoing, but I will give you some hint of what we are doing. So we work on the establishment for different subspecies. We look at the climate suitability, the host range, the host distribution, the vectors. We get data from the member state. We have a very good contribution from all the member states, from Spain, Italy, Portugal, and France, where we have the bricks to get the data. We get continually update of the data of what is the current situation, and we are getting our new data. We look at the data we have collected in years in the host plant database of Xylella. We reference the position of the different plant found infected. We look at scientific paper and additional sources. So by this work, we'll be able to see exactly in which area, which climate, Xylella, different subspecies are present, and then we try to model. This was already done in 2019. Now we do an update. We try to model to see which area of Europe is more suitable for the different subspecies. We also will look at the species. So if we do the model for the climate, we also have to put in a map the different crops at risk. So we look to different sources at different crops and vegetation by different subspecies which can be affected. And then we look at the vectors. For vectors here we have a specific grant, a cooperation grant with University of Bari, with Daniele Cornara, where it will help us in collecting from the literature all the data on the updated data on biology, ecology, the different vector of Xylella. And focusing first on olive and grapevine, which are the most concerned at the moment in Europe, and then on almonds and the other crops. So then we also looked in 2019 with the incubation period. The researchers, the scientists do a lot of experiments by inoculation. And this allows us to see how much time does it take in certain conditions to develop the symptom. And this is an update of the previous opinion, 2019. We look for data on both the latent period, the incubation period. We also did a call for data, so we launched on the website a call for research to share with us even unpublished data, and now this is part of our evaluation. And we're looking at a certain number of studies. In fact, at the end, out of all the search, we found 43 studies which on incubation period and 14 on latency period, which can allow us to extract data, because sometimes a published paper is very useful, but maybe doesn't contain enough data to be analyzed. So, and we are now doing the statistical analysis of this work, which is ongoing. For the spread, we try to use mathematical models to look at the spread and to look for the short and long jump spread. So not only for the spreading around one infected orchard, but also how sometimes this disease with several means can jump to a different distance. And this work is done mostly with our colleague, Martina Sendoia from IVIA and Rachel Russell from Cambridge University. And we cannot model everything. Risk assessment, like science, need to focus on particular aspect because we cannot do everything. If not, we still would keep doing things but never finishing. So we'll focus, of course, on the olive infection with Xylella fastidiosa subspecies pauca in Apulia. We'll focus on the almond infection in Alicante with the subspecies multiplex. We'll focus on Xylella fastidiosa. The data we received to start the activity was mostly from Mallorca, where they have fastidiosa subspecies on both grape and almond. Now we have new brick also in Apulia from these subspecies, and then we will focus on Spain, on the data we receive from France on non-crops, so natural vegetation in the south of France. You've seen it before in the slide by Karin Nienstedt. There is this blue area in the south of France where Xylella is present and under containment, but is in natural vegetation. About impact, this is the final part, the final most important part of the assessment will be done in the course of beginning of 2026. We will work a specific host, a specific subspecies. Much was already done by EFSA with many different experts in the recent years for the work on priority pests. We already have some work done for around 50 pests, including Xylella. But here we'll focus very much on the impact of a particular subspecies in particular crops. And we're now preparing to do this work. For risk-reducing option, we are working on 4 levels. We are working on the vector control. It's very important to control the vector of a disease which is transmitted, in this case, by a native insect. We work, on substances which can control the bacteria in the plants, and here we are very, very near to the presentation of today of BIOVEXO, on agronomy practice, and then on the tool that we also have for controlling new pests, which is use-resistant or tolerant plant variety. Vector control, in summary, this work is almost finished, and we had enough studies available for vector control. We extracted data at the end from 72 papers, and we can do a statistical analysis, meta-analysis of the results. And particularly, we look at the difference between the survival of the insect in the control respect to the treatment. We can classify the paper based on different level of possible bias in methodology, no bias, minor bias, major bias, or paper which are excluded because either not relevant or they really cannot be used for the analysis. Because the asset, for example, there are some paper where there is no control, so you cannot really make a comparison. And this will be shown then in a graphical way at the end. What we can say is that there are best treatment with reduced efficacy, the survival of the insect vector up to 80%. Generally, these are authorized pesticide. Some are non-synthetic pesticide. It is important to see that there is also efficacy of biocontrol made by fungi or nematode, which is significant, however, is lower at the moment than the synthetic pesticide. The use of predator is highly uncertain, probably because we deal with the native insects, so it's where how you say, everything is already established in the environment. And we are collecting data worldwide from all the literature on all the different species of insect vectors. For implant control agronomy practice, we are looking at all the paper published. We will keep this open until the moment we finalize the assessment, until next year. However, we have a less number of papers. There's much less published on implant control and also in agronomic practice. We're talking about 20, maybe we're right to 30 paper maximum. So yeah, we cannot do a statistical analysis, we'll do only a narrative description of the results of this paper. And for resistant variety, we have also a grant, a cooperation grant with CNR from Bari, coordinated by Maria Saponari, where the colleague from CNR Bari will help us in reviewing the resistance tolerance varieties, starting from our host plant database and looking at literature, and will also help us in providing an update on taxonomy, on phylogenetic analysis, date of introduction, and impact of the different MLST type of Xylella. I don't put the name of all the collaborators. These grants will be all our knowledge in the end, but no, I only put the coordinator for a reason of brief. So what we do for public consultation, so incubation period and potentially also the control of vector should be ready soon. So in the first quarter of 2026, we will launch a public consultation. For the other risk reduction option, the second quarter of 2026, and the full opinion of the public consultation is targeted to be launched during the summer 2026, so that end of 2026, we have a deadline by the European Commission on November 2026, we target to finish the work. So then the other topic of today is why we EFSA fund research project on Xylella. So EFSA fund some particular target research project when we doing the risk assessment, we identify area where there is a lack of published evidence that is really needed for our risk assessment. So we have done this for Xylella, given the importance of this pest for the European agriculture and environment in several instances. And in green you see the one which are concluded, in blue color the one which is ongoing or has to started. So the first one was the pilot project with CNR Bari on the host plants of Xylella fastidiosa, and I was very, very happy to hear from Maria that now the field we initially funded, but then was continued by the Ponte Bexil project, is now in production for some resistant variety are now in production. Then there was a study with different Italian institutions, university, Brescia, Torino, Bari, CNR, from different institutes working on the biology, collection of data, biology of the vectors in Italy. Then we have a study in Balearic Island, and a scientific study collecting the data on the biology of the vessel in Balearic Island. But the scientists there, they gave us the idea that we should communicate the results also to the citizens, to the children, to the general public. And with this idea, we make a small comic stripe cartoon that show to a bit what happened on Xylella in Europe, which is published on our website and is used by several media. And now ongoing, there was a very worrying outbreak of an invasive potential vector Xylella in the area between Spain and France recently, 2022. Sharpshooter Draculocephala robinsoni. Luckily, it's not a common pest in agricultural crops. It's mostly in the environment, but we funded a target study to look at the biology of the transmission of Xylella by this insect, which involved Spanish institutions like SIC, IRTA, University of Bari, and Foundation Edmund Mack in Italy from Trento. We have currently a project in US with University of Louvain in Belgium. They work with Virginia Tech and UC Berkeley. Why we have this project? Because we want that it is studied in America what happened with Xylella in the cold area on the temperate crops. So at the moment, Xylella is very concentrated in Europe, in the Mediterranean area. So we have outbreak in Spain, in France, in Portugal, in Italy. We don't know exactly what will happen with Xylella when it arrives to Central or Northern Europe. And we have the possibility to study this, what happened in US. US, Xylella is a common pest. It's not an area of big research. They don't fund much research. So we have a project which looks particularly in grapevine, in the northern area of distribution of the grapevine in US, what happened with Xylella, and in forest, and particularly focus on Xylella multiplex, which is the subspecies which, based on the climatological modeling, seems more suitable for the northern climate in the EU. And the last things, we just launched in 2025 a call for proposal for doing research on the epidemiology, the biology of the vectors in table grapes in Apulia, and is not yet signed the contract, but the awarded project should start to work in early January 2026. This was for us a very important problem to see the table grapes as an outbreak of Xylella transmitted by vectors. So we try to focus research to understand the epidemiology, so this can be helpful for the farmer for the local authority to control the disease. And each of these projects need to communicate and disseminate the results. That's very important. We do this together with scientists, stakeholders, in the scientific conference on Xylella, European conference, that is run every 2 to 3 years. We did 4 so far. One was online during COVID, the other in Ajaccio, in Balearic Island, in Lione. And the next one, I'm happy to announce, will be here in Puglia in Bari, the last week of June, 22-26 June 2026, and we'll organize together with the local authorities, the Plant Protection Service, and the European Research Project on Xylella. So communication is key. This is a campaign by EFSA. There's also a campaign by EPO at the airport to explain to the passenger the importance of plant health, the risk of plant health. The message is don't bring plants. You can bring pests with the plants. And it's a campaign we now run for 3 years. All the European members, the neighboring country are involved. So it showed that it's important that we talk with the people. And to conclude, so to do risk assessment, we utilize all your research results. And by conducting and publishing research results, you can provide evidence for the risk assessment, and particularly also much more important for designing solution for the pest management. So communication and interaction with stakeholders is essential for risk assessment and for research. And so we invite all the scientists to keep sharing and publishing the results, to participate to EFSA consultation, and to join the European conference. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Giuseppe. Quick question for you, because you talked about the importance of communication, right? So we see that there are projects like BIOVEXO that are trying to find solutions to a problem. On the other hand, we're still also trying to understand the problem, right? I mean, that these two things are going on in parallel. And you're doing a lot of research, let's say, looking at academic papers and trying to understand the science around this. I'm just wondering, how much are you engaging also with, let's say, growers on, let's say, real field experience of the problem, and how much are you able to feed that in also to your research on understanding the problem? because that might also help in the end to communicate results, right? If growers have been somehow part of, sharing their experience, and how much that can help you better understand also the disease, even if it's not necessarily a scientific approach in that sense, but it's still grounded in very real experience in the field.
Thank you. That's a good question. So EFSA is based in Parma, serve all the European Union. So we focus on evidence and data. The evidence and data is produced by the local researchers and is collected also by the local authorities. So we don't have the capacity to go around and meet all the farmers, even we would like to do it. So what we try to do it for our work is we try to keep our feet into reality. That means that our working group is traveling to the outbreak area where an outbreak is seen, accompanied by the local scientists, by the local authorities. We visit the outbreaks, we try to understand in practice how it works. We interact with the local stakeholders, and particularly the authority and the scientists, to get feedback on our results. We try to communicate. So we try to serve the farmers, although we don't have the capacity to meet and discuss with the farmer. I think this is more the task of the people working in the place. We cannot think that we can do everything. But I think it's a key. It's a key. The key message is what we do should be useful to the farmers, to the growers, to protect their crops at the end, because even the European measures are done to protect the crops. So the measures done to reduce the spread of Xylella are protecting all the crops outside the containment area, and the measures designed by the local authority in the containment area are meant to support the farmers in living with this situation, which we know is very difficult.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a question for Giuseppe? Or a comment, a reaction? No? Okay. Thank you so much.
It's always a very, very nice message that there is no question and very clear.
Very clear.
Or maybe it was very unclear. Nobody dared to ask any question.
Thank you so much.